All right, y'all. Man, I had to stop and put some lotion on because my elbow was ashy. But I was like, yo, how could one elbow be ashy, but then my other elbow, is it ashy? It wasn't as ashy as this one. But I don't know how this one got so much more ashy. Was I leaning on something? I don't know. Anyway, let's get into the video. Chris Distefano. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. Or Chris Distefano and Bill Maher are talking about Jesus. Now, Chris is a comedian. He's a stand-up comedian. I've never seen any of his work, but I've seen a lot of him, circulating on TikTok and Instagram. Seen a lot of his clips, but have not seen his full stand-up. But nonetheless, it should be an interesting conversation. How y'all doing, though? Are y'all doing good? I feel like I just be getting into the video. I don't really sit down and ask y'all how y'all doing. I just want to remind y'all, get in the word of God. It's cool to, come and kick it and watch some YouTube videos, but it's nothing like getting in the word of God and reading the Bible and spending time with your Father in heaven. So do that. Do it right now. Do it today. Don't forget. All right. Let's get into this video.
I believe in Jesus, by the way. We'll talk about that.
Oh.
I'm reading Case for Christ by Lee Strobel.
He said, I believe in Jesus, by the way. Bill said, oh, he did not want to talk about it.
Convincing evidence.
Wait, hold on. He said he's reading Case for Christ. Case for Christ is a really good book. I have the audio version of it. I've listened to it at least one time, maybe like 2 times. It's a really good book. You should check it out. If you have not read it already, The Case for Christ, if I'm not mistaken, it's written by a lawyer who is essentially going through the case as if it's like a trial, presenting all the facts and all the resources for the true evidence of Jesus Christ and Christianity. It's a really good book. You should check it out. But let's continue.
I believe in Jesus, by the way. We'll talk about that.
Oh.
I'm reading Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. It's convincing evidence.
What do you think? I throw people out of the club here? We believe in whatever you want.
I didn't. I went to Catholic school my whole life, but after reading this book, Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, the factual evidence that he existed is kind of overwhelming.
I'd like to see that because the factual evidence that he existed has always been underwhelming. In fact, it's always...
Read Case for Christ.
Yeah, I
Give
will.
it a shot by Lee Strobel.
This is based on what? Archaeological finds?
Archaeological finds.
New ones?
Theological finds. Ivy League.
What are theological finds?
Bill, ready for this?
Yeah.
If I told you, okay, if I told you factual evidence about Alexander the Great, you would believe me.
Okay, but even still, it's a silly point because who cares if Jesus lived? It's whether he's then died and was reborn and is, up in heaven with his Father who's really him.
Okay.
That's the part where the rubber meets the road. Maybe he existed. I agree. That's
fine.
Absolutely possible. Fine. He may have existed.
But according to Case for Christ, independent sources who didn't know each other, who wrote about him within 20 years of his death, talked about these miracles happening as in real time.
Okay, well, again...
And Alexander the Great's biographers, the earliest one was like 100 years after he died.
Chris, I'm going to have to burst your bubble now because I have to spit a couple of facts at you that are kind of under... Okay.
It's Hollywood.
There's only 2 sources in the Bible. Okay. There's the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Okay. There's also another guy, Josephus, who wasn't accepted, but read the Case for Christ.
Not in the Bible.
Okay.
But the Bible is itself an anthology. They found some few decades ago the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were other books that were just basically edited out. So right away we know a person decided what constituted the Bible, and just some stuff wound up on the cutting room floor.
I get it. Council of Nicaea. I get it.
Council of Nicaea, yes.
325 AD. Yes. That's when they decided the Christian religion. I agree with you.
Right.
I'm with you on that.
I remember that.
But I'm telling you, read this book.
That's Emperor Constantine.
Shout out Constantine, Turkey, all that.
Well, the first one...
Constantinople.
The first one to change the Roman Empire to a Christian empire.
They decided all the holidays.
Took 3 centuries.
I get it. And listen, Bill,
but,
I'm with you on that.
But here's the important point.
Let's do it.
There's only these 5 sources.
A little bit more tequila, that's it.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
I'm wrecked right now.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Good boys.
Not contemporaries of Jesus, not even close. Matthew, so they lived from 70 to 110 years after him.
I understand.
No, from 40 to 70 years after.
But they got their information from Josephus, who lived about 10 years after Jesus.
So already we're into a game of telephone. Okay.
Bill, yes, but
the other
I want to make you your point, but let me just quickly. The game of telephone, yes, I agree with you that point. But the game of telephone in Jesus' times, according to Lee Strobel in the case of Christ, was the simple fact of we're playing the game of telephone. There's 10 people here. The game of telephone, as we know it today, is you say something in my ear and then it goes around 10 times. And by the time it gets to you, it's something radically different. This game of telephone, this ancient game of telephone was, but you tell it to me, then the third guy confirms what you said before it goes to the fourth guy. So there's a level of checking, checks and balances.
Chris, you're working too hard. If you want to believe this shit, believe it. You don't have to convince me or
I'm just convincing you of case for Christ.
Or construct this scaffolding to which you hang this belief. Just believe it. It's all good.
Okay.
Don't
come to me, and when you die at St. Peter's, I'm not getting you in.
But you know, I can't go there with you. It's just, you know, it's silly. And
I'm just saying, it's nice the idea to believe in something. I'm just trying it on for size.
Here's also what's very interesting, and then I'll leave this subject, because, excuse me, I think I've bored the audience with this before, but...
What do you think, Barbara in Milwaukee gives a fuck? They turned this off, when they found out I wasn't Ellen.
Yeah, like that's the kind of audience we have.
Your audience is great.
So...
you think they'll like me?
St. Paul.
Good guy, St. Paul, a.k.a. Saul, and the capital of Minnesota.
Is the other source of the Bible.
Yes.
There's Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. I said the two names out of order because that's the order in the Bible. The first gospel, Mark, is 70 AD. Jesus dies in 33. So that's 40 years almost after he died.
Okay.
So not contemporaries. Paul comes before the gospel writers. He's writing around the year 50. In the 50s.
Okay.
So he's much closer to Jesus's time. So you'd think he would know more about Jesus than the people who came later. But actually, St. Paul knows almost nothing about Jesus. He barely conceives of him as something that, as a person who lived on earth. There's no details about his life like they are in the Gospels. So the people who came later know more than the person who wrote earlier. Just some food for thought.
But, okay, I understand. But he does acknowledge at some point, right? Paul, a.k.a. Saul, knows that Jesus existed, right? He talks about him.
He talks about, I'm saying he conceives him as a Godhead. He doesn't have this, it's not the narrative that's in the Gospels of Jesus went around and he did miracles and he did stuff and everybody loved him and he gets quoted a lot. He makes speeches, blessed are the meek. You know, he has adventures. He goes into the desert. It's a whole thing.
But what about...
And then at the end, it's a whole drama with, you know, he's crucified. Oh, no. Paul doesn't know any of this. All the stuff that the gospel writers obsess about and that are his biography. It's a little strange.
But Paul, it's okay for Paul to be somebody who maybe, there was a lot of people who didn't like Jesus.
You know what's okay?
And that's okay.
What's okay is that some people believe and other people don't. That's what's okay. It's like, that's you.
Yeah.
And
I'm not trying to put it on you. I'm just saying what I believe
I
in.
know. And
I'm wearing a corduroy shirt my mother got me for Christmas, and I feel confident.
Is that really? Your mother got you that?
Yeah.
I think that's a good ending point that Bill was making in terms of like, it's okay. You don't have to believe in Jesus. You have free will. You can believe in whatever you want to believe in. It's a good point. Because at the end of the day, in these types of conversations, when you have people like Bill Maher who believe that they already have all the information and believe that they already know all the facts and all the resources and all of the evidence for Christ, and they believe that Jesus is not God, he is not who he says he is, and he did not die on the cross, and he was not raised again, and that we should not put our faith in Jesus. When you're having these conversations and you know, in these scenarios, it's hard to change somebody's mind, because they already have a subset of ideas and beliefs about their faith and about themselves that's going to make it very difficult for you to change their mind, even if you present them with the information and the facts and the evidence for Christ. They're still going to find a way to not accept it and not believe it. And that's okay. I don't think that should shy us away from still having these conversations. You probably know somebody in your own life who is very stuck in their ways. And also, you got to understand something. The older that we get, the more our beliefs become further ingrained in us. And it's hard for us to let those beliefs go because it becomes a part of our identity. And Bill's not a young guy. He's on the latter stage of his life. And also the component that we have to understand is that it's tough when you have seemingly everything that your heart desires. Like when you're a celebrity, you have money, you have access, you have fame, you have fortune, you have all that kind of stuff. It's tough for you to allow yourself to be in a place of submission and dependence because you feel like you already have everything that you need. Now, we know that's not always the case. We see celebrities who crash out. We see celebrities who fall into deep depression, and they realize that all the things that they have is essentially a bottomless pit. It's a never-ending cycle of sin. But there are people who have a lot of access, have a lot of means, have done very well for themselves, who are very successful, who could care less about if Jesus was real or not, because they're chilling. They're living a good life. They got it made. They got everything that they want and everything that they need. They don't feel a need for God. The fact of the matter is, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. And some people are extremely comfortable with waiting until the moment that they pass away to find out. That terrifies me. I don't want to wait till the moment that I die to then realize, oh, snap. Jesus, you are real. You exist. You've always existed. You're eternal. I don't want to wait until that moment where I pass away to then come to the realization that the Bible is true. But some people are comfortable waiting until that moment. And then it's going to suck because they're going to be upset when Jesus turns them the other way and they have to go to hell. They're going to be upset. Then it's going to be like, oh, how could a loving God send me to hell? Well, you never wanted anything to do with Jesus in this world. You were so comfortable and confident in yourself, divulging in your own sin. You had your faith in this world. You could care less about having a relationship with Jesus while you were alive, but now suddenly you want to have a relationship with him now that you passed away and that you realize, oh, snap, you really are him. It goes back to the conversation of free will. It's a gift. Salvation is a gift. It's not exclusive. It's a free gift available to anybody who wants to accept it. But here's the thing, you have to accept it. God's not just going to force the gift of salvation upon you, because then it wouldn't be free will. Then you would really be a slave and you would really have no choice. And that would really just be forced love at that point. But God's not looking to force love in this relationship. He wants a genuine relationship with people who actually want to seek him, who actually love him. That's what God's looking for. People who actually want to put their faith in Jesus Christ. That's what God's looking for. So yeah, like you don't got to believe in Jesus. Believe in whatever you want to believe. But when that time comes, every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Christ is Lord. People have all of these other historical figures that they believe every single word in the history books that is said about them. But then when it comes to Jesus, they don't want to believe it. Because when it comes to Jesus, it challenges the very fabric of who they are as human beings. Because if Jesus is truly who he says he is, that changes everything that I know about myself, and I'm forced to live differently, to think differently, to love differently. And people don't want to do that because they're in love with their sin and they're slaves to their sin. They have no problem believing in all these other historical figures. They never question, is that true? Is that actually a fact? Did this actually happen the way that these books wrote it? Most people never question their history books. But then when it comes to the Bible, they question it. And then when you give them additional resources and additional evidence for the case that Jesus Christ is exactly who he says he is, even still, their flesh will not let them accept those facts because it's confrontational. There's friction, there's tension there. Because like I said, if Jesus is truly the Christ, the Messiah, then we got to act different, think different, be different, love different. And most people don't want to do that. And that's okay. That's okay. That's a really good book, though. The Case for Christ is a really good book. I want to read it again now that I'm thinking about it, because it's a really good book. But let me know what y'all think. Get in my comments, like this video. I'm out, y'all.